Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Student Showcase series, where I talk with some of our amazing VFX apprentices who have been through the program. Today, I am joined by Tom De Vis, and Tom is now not only one of our instructors, but he's also worked on the amazing Netflix show Arcane, which some of you may have seen. Hello, Tom. How are you doing?
Hey Jason, I'm fine.
It's good to have you here with us today. So, Tom had a pretty amazing journey through the world of effects that I'm excited to hear about. Tom, you didn't start making 2D effects. Tell us about the transition that you made going from your original career in entertainment into what you're doing today.
First, I went to school to learn game design, and then I got a job in a private company that made 3D animations for private selling of what they did. And then after a few years, I started realizing this is actually not going anywhere. I'm not improving anymore. So I saved a lot of money, so just enough so I could survive for a year. And I quit my job, and I had 1 year to learn 2D animation. And during that year, I started learning that I was more into effects, that they came more natural to me and they were just more fun to do. And so I started learning on the internet everything I could do about 2D effects, where I also found your YouTube channel with a lot of the courses. But it felt limited. So my education halted, and then just as I felt that I wasn't improving enough anymore, like the VFX Apprentice course got released, the booms and blasts, and then a bit later the tradigital part of it, and that's when I started really improving a lot.
That's cool. So you got into our content. I remember I was like, man, this guy's like really focused, but he has almost no 2D effects work, but he's already pretty good, even with just a few examples. And then as you went through the exercises, you just took off. It was so exciting to see. But what's funny about it is it wasn't long until, because when you joined, the 2D effects class was in beta, early access. And towards the end of the early access period now, you are one of our instructors. So
Yeah.
that was a funny moment when I realized I'm like, oh, shoot, the student has become the master. We should have him teaching some of this. And it's been great having you as an instructor. So at some point, you caught the eye of Studio Fortish in France, correct? And you're from Belgium, yeah? So how did that work out? Like, did you submit your portfolio to them? Did they find you? What was that process?
It's actually quite a funny story. It was around the time that all the companies worldwide were looking for 2D FX animators for the movie Space Jam, because they were in a huge clinch. And I was supposed to go to a studio in Tenerife called Toma Vision, but there was some problem with the contract. And I was just waiting for them to see if I could get a contract to be able to travel to Tenerife. Because of COVID, we needed a contract before you could travel. And in that time, it took them a month or something before they could send me a contract so I could travel. And in that time, I was giving up on it. And I saw on LinkedIn that Fortish was looking for a fix animator. So I contacted them. And just on the day Toma Vision contacted me, okay, everything is good, you can come. I got also a mail from Fortish saying, hey, can we have a conversation with you? Uh,
Oh,
and it
wow.
and yeah, and it was with the supervisor Guillaume, and like I had Guillaume's work in my library, so I knew him. I was like, oh, I definitely want to have that conversation. And then actually, in 2 days later, I was hired. I signed a contract with them. I had to say sorry to my vision. They can't come.
Yeah, it was through you that we actually were able to get Guillaume to do another lesson with us, the 2D effects course as well. So yeah, he's incredible and just so skilled at what he does. So many of the artists there are. I'm sure it must have been exciting to learn from the other 2D effects animators there, yeah?
Yeah, and also very stressful because it was towards the end of the production. I think I was there for 2 to 3 months,
Hmm.
and well, everybody was there already working on full time. and the first weeks were so stressful. I couldn't match their level, and I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
wow.
And Guillaume knew, of course, because my level in maturity wasn't high enough when he hired me. But I promised him, like, I know I'm not good. Like in the conversation with him when he was interviewing me, I told him like I will not. I'm not good enough, but I will work my ass off. And that's exactly what I did for those three
Nice.
months. I worked 12 to 14 hours a day to be
Oh,
able to
wow.
work on their level. Uh,
That's so
so
awesome. I mean, as a junior artist coming onto a team like that, that's bound to happen, right? You're bound to see these people, like you said, you had his artwork in your reference library that you've been looking at of how in the world did they do it? And here you're sitting next to the person. Sounds like just an incredible learning opportunity. That's interesting also that it was so stressful and with long hours. It reminds me a lot of being in art school. So did it feel like you were back in school again?
yes and no. In my opinion, it was better than school
Oh, nice.
because we had these weekly meetings where everybody would show their work, and you could see the ugly work was mine. So each week I was super motivated for the next day to work harder to be able to catch up on them, and
Hmm.
that drive has stayed with me. Uh, all those people were super talented, and they worked very hard on it. So
Talent really is just a matter of work ethic and time.
mhm,
If you
yeah.
spend the time consistently, you gain the talent, right? Um, that's cool. So after the project ended, you had mentioned like you went on to new opportunities, right? I know like they only kept on a couple of the team. And where did you go after that?
To a movie in Belgium, a feature film at Enclume Animation.
Cool.
Um, and that was a fun experience. They needed it. They did a similar thing. It's a 3D movie with 2D FX, and yeah, they needed a 2D FX guy.
Hmm.
And I started just that, and I had to concept with the art designer to find a style that worked for them and how we could incorporate it in. First, there was we were speaking of let's do it in Blender because the whole movie was made in Blender with grease pencil and animated 2D FX straight in Blender. But then, just for time performance reasons, I was able to do it in Harmony just on the renders, and they would composite it together.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and then a few months later, they hired extra people, and I became the supervisor of them. And that
Oh,
was
nice. From newbie junior artist to supervisor on the next project that you were on. That's really interesting. Um, so that's crazy. So they were working in grease pencil. Did you ever use grease pencil?
I did it in my weekends because it really was. I was still working at Fortish when I was supposed to start with them, but Fortish ran out for a few more weeks, so I kept
Oh,
mailing with them like, "Oh, I can't come. I really want to finish this project." They were very understanding. And so in my weekends, in the evenings, I was trying out grease pencil because I figured I would have to learn it for them to
yeah.
before that.
Blender is so powerful. It can do everything. I know grease pencil. I've seen some really cool things in there. Maybe we'll have you teach some grease pencil lessons next. Everyone in the Blender community just freaked out. I know that's a very passionate community and they love spreading the good word of Blender. So maybe
So
we'll talk about that later.
it's a super strong program.
Yeah, for sure. So that's fantastic. So you're doing some instructional stuff with us. I know that film wrapped up and you're bouncing on to some more work now. Is this common in the 2D effects industry to kind of go from job to job, studio to studio? Is that generally what somebody should expect if they're starting out on their journey?
For me, it is because I'm now choosing already in what style I want to work. I can
Mm.
take on some more bigger projects that would last longer. But if the style doesn't speak to me, I will deny it. Uh, but yeah, so you can choose to either work in a lot of small projects like trailers, video games, music videos, or you can just choose to work on large scale series or feature films if you're lucky enough to be there from the beginning. Then you can work for a couple of years on a project. Or I don't know if there are studios that have a lot of FX animators permanently hired. I know of a few in Canada, but in
Yeah, I
Europe.
think, yeah, I know in Canada there's Mercury Filmworks and Jamfield. Another one of our instructors works at Jamfield, Dan Elder. He's an amazing guy. Um, I know, I think Marvel Studios now with some of their animated series, they keep people on. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it really varies. I know sometimes film can be volatile, like, oh, a show ended, so now everyone gets to go find different work, or no, this is a show that's going to go forever and you can animate on it forever. So it just really depends, like you say, from
Yeah.
what I've heard. I don't know.
Yeah, to me personally, it's also a good thing depending on what you want. If, for example, you work on a project full time, you might get less uh, fun work to do. Whereas if you jump from project to project, you have the downtime in between projects, but you can really choose the very nice and fun projects to work on.
Yeah, yeah, that's great flexibility. So I I mean, it's just always exciting like chatting with you because you're the kind of person that just gets work done, and I love that about you. I always admire your work. We're going to have a lot of it playing throughout this video, of course, but being that you're in a position now where you've had these experiences, you've only recently been through the growth, like how long was that? Was that just like a year ago that you started in the 2D effects like lessons, and now a year later you've been on like a few major productions and even at like a supervisor level? So what advice would you have for people that are thinking of making the switch to 2D effects or trying 2D effects animation?
Um, to me, it all depends on where you want to go, like, and how much time you have, of course.
Mm,
For example, I would not focus on all the effects at the same time. I would take one style, like, for example, smoke, fire, electricity, dust. You choose whatever you want, and you do a couple of studies, and then um, you compare what you did and reevaluate it with other work that you see on the internet, and criticize yourself. Do studies from real life, do sketches, go frame by an effect that you find on the internet and why you like it, and really force that style in yourself, like with 2D drawings, like on paper or with a ballpoint pen, or in Photoshop. Like all of them, you should do them, in my opinion. And not just animation, but also just still frames, just so you get used to
mm.
the style, and then keep doing it and keep improving on the same effect. And for example, you do if you can do it full time, do it for a week, and then you take another one, and that's how I personally do it, is push it as far as possible. And that's if you don't have access to VFX Apprentice. If you do have access to VFX Apprentices, I would do the same thing, but with one course. And then first you download also the source file you get from the teacher, and then you look at the drawing. You can flip in the file how you want to do it, and then study it, copy it, and then you do it yourself. Like don't show the work that you just copied how the you did it, or it's 70 or 90% like the animator. Just make it really your own. Yeah, it can already be with just flipping the effect, so that your brain has to think differently, so it gets in your head more logical.
Something I did, this is fantastic advice. It's reminding me of when I was in art school learning 2D effects animation for the first time. I did that. I went to like all my favorite films. Like I remember going to Mulan with the avalanche scene and all of those crazy effects pouring down the mountainside. And I screen captured. I used literal print screen on my computer, and I did print screen and then next frame, print screen, next frame, print screen, and I was pasting those out into Photoshop, and like basically saving out images. I could have spent like 5 minutes finding good screen capture software that would let me get some frames, but I wanted each frame, and then I would flip through them at full resolution, and I would like find a frame that I liked and print it out, and then put a blank piece of paper over it and trace it, just like you're saying, like actually draw over the master drawings that were amazing. And I learned as I was doing it, I was paying attention to the tracing, not just tracing it to say, oh, I could do this, but like I was learning. I was like, oh, interesting, that curve's there. And I was sort of like feeling out the lines as I did
Yes,
it. It's like
exactly.
I think a great way to learn.
And while you do it, say, what if I change this? And you do it, and you look at it, and then, for example, you duplicate your frame, you change it, and then you can flip between, and you can be critical of yourself and say, I like it more with this or for this reason. And
Yeah,
don't do it while watching something else or listening to a podcast. Just give it your 100% of your focus, especially if you're starting out. Like if you're doing it for a while, like if I'm animating a water splash, like on my second screen there's a show playing that I can listen to. But if I'm doing something new, it gets 100% of my attention.
I remember hearing from one of my professors who worked with people that were there at the beginning of the Walt Disney animation era when it was old paper and pencil for animation. There was never any music in the studio. You know, back then they didn't really even have headphones, and
Mhm.
there was never, it was just quiet. People just drawing, focused, totally focused, no distractions. And that's how they were able to really create, I think, art from the soul, undistracted. Now, I know today some people have a hard time being creative without their music. And I don't know, I think depending on the type of work, if it's learning work, music, I think, is quite a distraction because your brain has a hard time recording new information. For me, music is good when I'm in flow of doing something that I already know how to do. But if I'm trying to do something new that's different that I'm trying to learn, yeah, I think I'm with you. I think music for me can be very distracting, and it's better to just have silence.
I've
Yeah.
noticed that, for example, I'll keep going to my water splash because that's the most basic FX for me. It's if I, for example, listen to techno or metal or whatever, that fast-paced music, my splash will go way quicker than when I'm listening to classical music. So that's why
Mm,
I feel that music is a bit dangerous because it influences your effect. Of course, this doesn't matter if you have a 3D scene on which you're working or a 2D. Like if you're working on animation, then you're limited by their spacing and their timing. But
yep.
if you just do it on a white background, it's you get influence.
Well, this is all fantastic advice. If students want to follow up with you and learn more about how to get started in 2D effects, are you available? Should we link you in the description?
Yeah, you can reach me over on Instagram or Twitter, and
Cool.
the link will be there.
Yeah, we'll put it down there. Well, it's been fantastic chatting with you, Tom. So excited to keep working with you and see what you work on next. We'll definitely keep everybody updated. So thank you for coming today, and thank you everybody for watching.